What's happening, everyone? Steve here, Cars with Steve, and today we're doing another head-to-head comparison. This time taking a look at the Ford Ranger, comparing that with the Ford F150. We're going to be talking about technology, vehicle spacing, what's underneath the hood, styling, and a number of other things. If you have any questions, drop down in the comment section below and let me know. But before we get started, I want to give a huge shout out and a thank you to Formula Ford for giving me access to these vehicles to shoot the video for you today. Jump down into the description below in order to find their contact details. But let's dive into it, have a little bit of fun, and see what these vehicles have to offer. Taking a look at some basic styling of the vehicle. So this specific Ranger, it is the Cyber Orange, which I think it pops quite a little bit. It almost looks yellow, a little bit of a tinge of orange there and there as well. Now the Sport Appearance Package inside of the Ranger is going to give us a few things. We've got this nice machine kind of look wheel to it. Really, really nice. We've got the option for the all-terrain tire. Now on top of that, we do have the option for the FX4 Off-Road Package, which is going to give us off-road suspension, a different tire, as well as skid plates. So if you're taking the vehicle off-road constantly, I definitely recommend looking at that FX4 package. But if you're going to be using it as a primary daily driver, definitely stay away from the FX4 because it's going to change the dynamics of the ride itself. But really nice fender flare pop-out along the side. Moving a little bit further back along the body. So this is the 4-door, so the Super Crew configuration of the vehicle. Now one thing to point out, we do not have the option of getting running boards standard in any package. It is available as an add-on through the factory, or you can do something aftermarket. And there's a few different styles that are available. So you're either looking at a chrome or a standard black running board as well, which is going to stretch along the entire body of the vehicle to get in and out of the vehicle a little bit easier. Now I'm 6 feet tall, so I can obviously get in and out of this thing a little bit easier, but if you're like 5'5", 5'6", you definitely want to look at the running boards as an option, and so that you're not hopping up in order to get inside of this thing. Taking a peek under the hood. Now in the North American market, there is only one engine choice available, and that's the 2.3 liter EcoBoost engine. From a power perspective, it's going to be able to push out 270 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque. Now when it comes down to it, we've got easy access to a few things, so if we need to top up our fluids, we can easily do that. So easy access there, easy access to our battery, and then we can also easily check our oil if we need to. Now looking at some basic vehicle styling on the outside, this is the XLT Sport Appearance Package, which means we have no chrome on the outside of the vehicle. It's body color all throughout. We've got a nice black grille along the front there as well. Now on top of that, looking at the headlamps, we got LED headlamps there. We've got our fog lamps underneath and a few hooks along the front as well. So styling wise, if you're not a fan of chrome, look at the XLT Sport Package because it's going to give you that body color paint. But on top of that, we're gonna get a console. So we're gonna get dual captain's chairs in the front row with a console in the middle, which means that our shifter is going to go from the steering wheel onto our hand instead. It's powered, so we can move that up and down as well. And there is the option for the interior work surface area, which is exciting. We're gonna get to that one in just a little bit. But I love the styling of it. The 21 F150 did get a little bit of an upgrade on the outside, but the inside is where it's really got its gold this year. So huge, huge upgrades. We're gonna touch base on the interior in just a second. Let's cover off a few things on the wheels as well. Now, because we're in the sport package of the vehicle, we're going to have an 18-inch tire standard. Goes from a chrome style wheel into this darker metallic alloy instead. Now 18-inch tires are going to be standard inside of the sport pack of the 302 version of the vehicle. Now on top of that, we do have options between 17-inch, we can go up to 20-inch tires plus, depending on the options of the vehicle trim level that we're looking at. So 18-inch tires are going to be standard inside of the XLT when we get the 302A version of the vehicle. And we've got a few different options when it comes down to the rubber. So we can either look at an all-terrain tire or we can look at an all-season tire. So we have a few different options that are available. Nicely laid out there as well. Now, when it comes down to the actual drivetrain of the vehicle, it is available either as a rear-wheel drive, so a 4x2, or you can get it in the 4x4. Now, because we're in the XLT version of the vehicle, we've got our 2 high, 4 high, and 4 low. If we were to look at the Lariat and above, that would give us the 4 auto setting instead. Now, a few other things to highlight on the outside. Because we are in the 302 version of the vehicle, we do have running boards. When we get the Sport Pack, it's going to be this black running board that we're looking at. When we don't get the Sport Pack, it's going to be a chrome running board along the side instead, but looks really, really sharp. Let's actually hop inside for 1 second so I can show you the seats. So as you can see there, we've got that dual captain's chairs with the console in the middle, and then we've got that power folding shifter in the middle. All right, now taking a peek underneath the hood of this vehicle. So this is the 5-liter V8, so the naturally aspirated engine. Looking at the F-150, it does have 6 available engine choices. We've got the 3.3-liter V6, which is going to push out 290 horsepower and 265 pound-feet of torque. The 2.7-liter EcoBoost, which is going to push out 325 horsepower and 400 pound-feet of torque. The 3-liter turbo diesel, which is going to push out 250 horsepower and 440 pound-feet of torque. The 5-liter V8, which we're looking at, that's going to push out 400 horsepower and 410 pound-feet of torque. And then we've got the 3.5-liter EcoBoost, which is going to push out 400 horsepower, 500 pound-feet of torque. And then lastly, we've also got the PowerBoost engine, which is new for the 2021 model year, and that's going to give us 430 horsepower and 570 pound-feet of torque. So as you can see, we've got a ton of different options when it comes down to the engine configuration. Which one you go with is ultimately going to depend on what you need inside of the vehicle. So more power, more towing capacity, etc., you're going to want to look at the 3.5-liter EcoBoost engine. If you hate the idea of a turbocharged engine, you've got Old Faithful, the 5-liter V8, which is, depending on how you have it configured, you're going to be able to pull up to 13,000 pounds. Now, taking a peek under the hood, we've got easy access if we ever need to fill up our windshield wiper fluid. We've got easy access to the battery, to a number of other fluids as well, and then we can easily, well, not quite as easily, but we can kind of check our oil just along the very top as well. Now we are looking at the 302A version of the Ranger, so standard technology. We've got our backup camera along the top. We've also got the reverse sensing system, so lets us know what's going on as we start to back up. Now on top of that, we've got our blind spot system, so lets us know if anybody's entered the blind spot on either side of the vehicle. And there's also the lane keeping system, which is going to either give us a little bit of a nudge, or it's going to shake the steering wheel a bit, almost as if we're running over rumble pavement as we drive. So really, really nice from that perspective. Now because we're in the 302 version of the vehicle, we also do have that rear sliding window. Now it is manual sliding. It's not going to be a power sliding inside of the Ranger, regardless of what trim level you're looking at. When it comes down to towing inside of the Ranger, so regardless of which trim level you're looking at, whether it's the Super Crew or the Super Cab, it's going to be able to pull the same. Factory towing option is going to give you up to 7,500 pound towing capacity inside of this tiny 2.3-liter turbocharged engine. So plenty of power from that perspective, tons of things that we can tow. Now, one thing to note about the towing capacity, that's going to be total towing capacity, which also includes your payload. So if you've got like 1,000 pounds of materials in the bed of the truck, a few passengers and things like that, your towing capacity is going to drop by 1,000 to 1,500 plus pounds. So definitely something to take into account. But as you can see there, with the tow package from the factory, we've got the receiver and the 4 7-pin wiring harness there also. Looking at the bed of the vehicle, so taking a look, this is the 5-foot box. We do have the option of just unlocking from the key fob in order to be able to open this thing up. Let's kind of spin you around so you can see what the dimensions are looking like in this thing. So box size dimensions are going to be showing up there. Now we are looking at the 5-foot box. We do have the option for the 6-foot box instead. And one of the nice things is that even if you get the 5-foot box, you do have the option to get the bed extender as well. So we can extend that out and we can keep this thing locked down if we need that little bit of extra space. So if you need the interior space for that 4 or 5-seater, we do have the option of extending this thing out by getting that bed extender in order to be able to lock things in as we're traveling. So something to take into account there. Looking at some standard technology inside of the vehicle. So this is the 302A version of the vehicle. So we've got our backup camera. We've also got the trailer tow package. Now that's going to come standard in the 302 and it is optional. You don't need to get the full trailer tow package. You could just look at getting the receiver itself instead if you're just going to be towing something light. Because we're in the 302 version, we also do have our reverse sensing system, and that's going to come standard. On top of that, the running boards are going to be a part of that 302A package. We've also got our blind spot system, so lets us know if anybody's entered the blind spot on either side of the vehicle, and that's going to be standard on some trim levels of the vehicle. And we also have our lane keeping system as part of the driver assistance package. Now, one of the other things to point out, we do have the option for that 360 camera as well. This one doesn't have it, but if it did, it would put another camera underneath both side view mirrors, and then we would also have a front-facing camera there as well, and that's going to give us a full 360 view of the vehicle as we drive. Towing capacity inside of the F-150 is going to vary widely. It's going to depend on the type of vehicle that you have, your configuration, so whether you're at the Super Crew, the Super Cab, or the regular cab, it's going to depend on your box length and the engine that you've got underneath the hood as well. Minimum, you're looking at around 7,000 pound towing capacity, and it's going to max out around 14,000 pounds with the max trailer tow package when you look at the 4x2 drivetrain with the 3.5 liter EcoBoost engine. There are a ton of different options that are available. Check down in the description below because I've put together a comprehensive video that talks about all the differences between the engines and the different towing capacities, payload capacities, and things like that. Now, a couple things to note about the towing and payload capacity in general. Whatever you have inside of the truck, people, cargo, things like that, that's going to subtract away from what you can tow. So if you need to pull, let's say 10,000 pounds, you're gonna need to look at a vehicle with that max trailer tow package in order to be able to make sure you're not gonna be pulling too much when you take that towing into account as well as payload inside of the vehicle. Looking at the box size of the vehicle, we have a few different options that are available. When we get into the Super Crew that we're looking at, we've either got a 5.5 or 6.5 foot box that's available. You get into the Super Cab, you can go up to an 8 foot box. The regular cab, you can get that 8 foot box as well. So what configuration you go with is going to depend on what you ultimately need to do with the vehicle. But taking a look, we've got the 5.5 foot box. In order to be able to lower the tailgate, we can do it on the key fob. So if we take a peek, we can double press on the key fob in order to lower it. There also is a button along the top there as well. So nice slow release, and then we're just going to manually lift it back up. Now, a couple other things to take into account. This vehicle behind me does not have the tailgate step, but that is available as an option. So depending on how often you get in and out of the back of the truck, you might want to look at that option because it's going to give us a little step in order to be able to hop inside of the truck easily. Now, having said that, I'm 6 feet tall, so I can easily get in and out. So if you're a little bit shorter, you may want to look at that tailgate step as an option. And for a few $100, not only is it going to be more effective to get in and out of the vehicle, but it also will help the resale value as well. As we take a look along the back, so we do have a few clamps if we need to cut some wood as we go. As I mentioned, this one doesn't have the tailgate step, but if we take a look over at this one, so just along the top there, as you can see, this one does. So all we do is push the button out in order to extend it to get into that bed a little bit easier. But taking a look, because we're in the 302 version of the vehicle, we do have our tie downs. So those are going to be standard across the F-150 lineup. In the 302A package, we also do have some additional cleats that we can add in. So we've got 4 cleats along the side there to give us a total of 8 tie downs. Now, one thing that will be standard inside of the vehicle as well, we do have our box lighting, so our LED bed lighting. And then we also do have a tiny little inverter in the back as well. We can also upgrade that to a 2 kilowatt hour if we wanted to. And then when we get inside of the Power Boost version of the vehicle, so that 3.5 liter hybrid, it's going to give us the option for up to a 7.2 kilowatt hour battery, which means we could literally power an arc welder off of this thing. Now the box dimensions are showing up, so as you can see there, we've got a 5.5 foot box, which is essentially going to end right here. So as we have this lifted up, we've got a 5.5 foot box dimension. Now with the bed fully extended down, we get an extra foot and change. There is the option for an aftermarket accessory where we can get a bed extender. So depending on which version of the truck you go for, if you have to sacrifice and get one of the shorter boxes right now, just knowing that you can extend the box out by getting that box extender if you needed to, you can always have this tailgate down as well in order to give you a little bit of extra space. So if you're carrying 2x4s, extra wood, things like that. Now, in order to fill up the vehicle, very straightforward. Along our driver's side, we've got a little cutout there. We're just going to press and open up, and it's a capless system. So just insert your fuel hose, fill up, and you're good to go. Click it in order to lock it back into place. When it comes to fuel quality, just regular 87 gas, 87 octane is all you need. So minimum manufacturer's recommendation. Filling up fuel inside of the F-150 is a very straightforward process. Just along our driver's side door, we've got a little fuel cap, and it's a capless system. So all you're gonna do is just insert your fuel hose, close it, lock it back up, and you're set to go. Now, when you look at the Power Boost version of the vehicle, so when you get into that hybrid, the gas cap is actually locking. It's not going to be locking in anything but the Power Boost version of the vehicle. Now, if you're concerned with fuel theft and things like that, there are some aftermarket options if you want to get a cap with a lock on it instead. And then when it comes down to the fuel quality that you want to use, just your regular 87 gas. So regular 87 octane is the minimum manufacturer's recommendation. Now, having said that, when you get into the turbocharged engine, so the 2.7 and the 3.5, I do recommend a higher quality fuel. That's just going to help things under the hood burn a little bit better. Now, on top of that, typically with the turbocharged engine, you're going to want to care for it a little bit more meticulously than the regular naturally aspirated engines. So you're going to want to change out spark plugs and things like that a little bit more frequently as well. With the Super Crew version of the Ranger, I've got the driver's seat set up for somebody 6 feet tall. I'm 6 feet tall. I still have a decent amount of knee room and a little bit of room for my feet as well. Up overhead, I've got about 2.5, almost 3 inches of headspace. So taller people can get in the back of the vehicle. Now, something to take into account, if you need that bigger box, so that 6-foot box instead, and you get the super cab, the back seats, you're essentially going to be losing a foot in the back as well. So definitely something to take into account, because if you've got some taller people, you're going to have to look at the option for the bed extender instead. Now, one other thing to note, if you've got children that are going to be in car seats, if they're going to be that rear facing, so they're going to be facing the back of the vehicle, if you have the seats moved up a bit more, they'll be able to fit, but it might be tight inside of the Super Cab version of the vehicle. The Super Crew that we're in, they could probably fit if you get those seats forward a little bit more, but you might need to look at an F-150 as an option instead. Taking a look at some basic features in the back, as you can see, the driver's side does not have that pocket, but the passenger side does. Moving into the back of the console, you can see there we've got a little storage space along the top, a few traditional USB ports, as well as a 150-watt adapter. So if we need to plug in a traditional wall outlet, we've got the ability to easily do that. Now, as we start to move along the back seat, so a few things to point out. First, let's get rid of that seatbelt. You can see along the top, we do have a little pull that we can pull this down, nice and tight, but we've got some cup holders in the back, and we can lift that up in order to lock it back into place again. Now, one other thing to note, we can crank this up in order to fold this whole seat down. So let's crank that up and let's jump back. And as you can see there, this whole thing comes down. You can just kind of make it out along the back there, but we do have our jack for if we ever need to change the wheel ourselves. And there's that white spigot along the side, and that's going to be useful if we ever need to fill up the car using a jerry can. So what we would do is put that into the tank first, jerry can after that, and you're set to go. Pulling back, click, in order to lock it back into place. Now, one other thing to note, we do have this little handle along the bottom. We can crank that in order to lift the whole seat up. As you can see there, we do have a little bit of storage space along both the driver and the passenger side, which is a nice little touch. Same thing, drop in order to lock it back into place. Looking at second row spacing inside of the F-150. So I'm 6 feet tall. I've got a couple inches of head space. Now, one thing to note, the vehicle that we're looking at does not have the sunroof, so that panoramic roof. If you got one with the roof, you're gonna lose about 1 inch of head space as well. So something to take into account, I've literally got probably about 3 inches, 3.5 inches of head space up overhead. So if you've got some taller people, they can definitely sit here. If they're taller, you may need to get them to sit in one of the front seats instead. But tons of space in the back. Now, one of the nice things about the F-150 is that we can also fold these seats up. So we can crank this lever and we can lift that up, and as you can see there, we've got a little bit of storage underneath this seat. So it's a 60-40 split, 60% driver, 40% passenger, a little bit of storage space. Now, there is an aftermarket accessory that was introduced this year, and that's that partition lockable storage. So what it'll do is it'll essentially extend the storage out, and if you're not using it, you can simply fold it down. But one of the nice things is that there also is, you can use the key in order to be able to lock this thing up as well. So definitely useful. We can click that in order to lock it back down into place as well. Then you do have the ability to open up either side, so we can lift both of these sides up if we needed to. When we get into that passenger side though, it is going to be a power inverter that's going to be included in the back there. Now, looking at some second row features, so along the driver and the passenger seats, we do have our pockets in the back if we need to store a few things. Moving down along the console, because this is the XLT Sport Pack, we've got the console instead of the bench seat, but we do have a traditional cigarette lighter adapter there. Moving down a little bit, so as you can see, we also do have a few USB ports, so our USB and our USB-C, as well as a built-in inverter. So we've got the ability to plug in a traditional wall outlet in the back of the vehicle if we need to. Now, this is the XLT trim level of the vehicle, so we're not going to have heated seats at all. If you want the heated second row seats, you're going to have to be in the Lariat or above. Take a look in the description below, because I've done a full walk-around video of the Lariat that you can check out as well. Now, a few other things to point out. As we start to move up overhead, we've got a few hooks on both sides, and then we've also got our cabin control lighting for the back seat. Now, one more thing to point out at the back of the F-150, as you can see there, we've got a little tab along the side in the passenger seat. We can just crank that in order to lift this forward, and as you can see there, we do have our jack along the back as well as our spigot. So we would use that if we ever need to use a jerry can in order to fill up the vehicle. So we insert that into the capless system first, jerry can after that, and Bob's your uncle. And looking along the outside door, as you can see there, we do have the SecuriCode, which is available as an aftermarket add-on, or you can get it from the factory as well. So 5-digit code in order to be able to get access to the vehicle if you don't have your fob on you. As we start to hop inside, looking at the driver's door, we've got our unlock and our lock button, door handle, our window controls, as well as the ability to kill off power to those rear windows. Moving down, we've also got a little pocket so we can store some things if we need to. Just to the left-hand side of the steering wheel, so we can adjust our side view mirrors if we need to. Moving down a bit more, we can turn our fog lamps on or off. We can figure out what's going on with our running lamps. And we've also got our dimmer switch for the instrument cluster, so we can make that cluster screen brighter or darker as necessary. We can also turn our box lighting on. Adjusting the driver's seat inside of the Ranger is going to be a power process inside of the 302 version of the vehicle. And that's going to be power driver and power passenger. Now it's partial power. When we get into the lower trim level, it's going to be manual. Higher trim level inside of the Lariat, you're going to be power adjustable as well. Next up, let's take a peek at the steering wheel. So very straightforward. Now this is going to be a quick video going over some of the basics of the steering wheel and that Sync 3 screen. If you're looking for the more in-depth walk around, check down in the description below because I've done a full walk around specifically of that Sync 3 system. But let's look through some of the basics of the steering wheel. So along the left-hand side, we can adjust. So this is going to be the dial pad for that little instrument cluster screen. So we can go up and down between different screens as we go up. So let's say if we go to our trip counter there, so we can press the OK button in the middle. We hold that for a few seconds in order to reset that back to our factory default again. Moving down a little bit more. So this vehicle does have the adaptive cruise control system, and that's going to be standard when we get the technology package. So the adaptive cruise control system is essentially your set it and forget it cruise control. We can turn the system on there. Once we get to the current speed that we'd like to go to, we press it up or down in order to be able to set our speed. We can increase or decrease 1 kilometer or 1 mile per hour at a time. And then we've also got our distance indicator. So how far or how close are we away from the vehicle that's in front of us? Now the adaptive cruise control system is a smart system. So if it senses if it senses a vehicle that's in front of us that's going a little bit slower, it's automatically going to lower our speed. But if you kind of get a little bit antsy because it's your first time using it, you hit the brake, you can easily resume it if you need to, or you can cancel it out. And then we can also turn the system off completely as well. Moving along the right-hand side, we can also increase or decrease our volume. We can change between songs or radio stations, and we can also change between our active sources. So this is a hot button press to change between AM, FM, Sirius XM, etc. As we start to move down a little bit more, we can either answer or hang up on a phone call. We can mute our audio, and we've got our voice command prompt. The voice command button is going to give us the ability to either change radio stations, we can make phone calls, or we can navigate using our voice. Moving back to the steering wheel, we've got our settings button. So as we press that, as you can see there, it does change out the screen. It brings us to our basic settings for that Sync 3 screen, and we can press the home button in order to bring us back to the home screen instead. And that's going to be the basics of the actual steering wheel itself. As we start to move in a little bit, so along our left stick, we've got a button along the very tip, and that's going to be for our lane keeping system. So lane keeping system on or off. We also know it's on when we see those lanes along the bottom there. So the actual system is going to turn on once we hit about 60 kilometers an hour, it's going to go green. And then if it starts to recognize we start to veer over into a lane without signaling, it's either going to shake the steering wheel a bit, almost as if we're running over rumble pavement, or it'll actually gently nudge us and pull us back into our lane, or it'll do a mix of both of them. So it'll give us a little bit of a shake and tug us back into our lane again, which is really, really nice. Along the right side, we do have our rain sensing wipers to adjust how sensitive it is. If your vehicle doesn't have rain sensing wipers, this is going to adjust how fast it's going as you go. We can turn our wipers on or off from there and pull in towards us in order to get that windshield wiper fluid going. Now as we move off to the right-hand side, beautiful Sync 3 screen. Now this specific one does have factory navigation. If yours didn't, don't worry about it because you can connect either Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, wired connection using USB, and you can use Apple Maps, Google Maps, or Waze directly through this middle screen instead. So if you don't have factory navigation, not a big deal, but really nice, big, beautiful screen. Now I'm just going to go through a quick little walk around, but if you're looking for the more in-depth version, check down in the description below for that full Sync 3 walk around. Starting off, let's take a look at a few things. So we've got our basic for audio. We've got some more advanced climate control settings, which if we look down the center stack, we've got some basic settings there as well, but just some more advanced ones as we go through. We do have dual zone climate control, the basics for our fan control as well, air circulation and things like that. We can easily connect either Android or iPhone devices. Factory navigation, very straightforward. And we've also got some basics for settings. So we can change out the treble, mid-range, bass, basic sound settings, change our display, and our basic voice control as well. Back to the home screen again. Now as we start to move down, we've got our four-way blinkers. We can easily turn those off if we need to. We've also got our volume rocker, so we can adjust from there. We can turn the system on or off. We can either change songs or radio stations, play or pause. Now we do have a tuning rocker there, so we can change out the station that we're on if we need to. We've also got the ability to, under our audio settings, do a direct tune, or like I said, we've got the ability easily just to go through our voice and change the stations that way. That's probably going to be the best way to do it instead. Moving back down, we've got dual zone climate control on the outside there, so we can adjust as necessary. We've got our fan control and basics for our climate control. Now in the vehicle that we're in, the 302 version, we do have heated front row seats. We're never going to have heated second row seats inside of the Ranger, so something to point out there. And we've got a few 12-volt ports there also. So both on the driver and the passenger side. Moving down a bit more, as you can see, we've got a few USB ports there. And then we've also got our engine start-stop button. So if that engine start-stop is driving you nuts, you can disable it on a case-by-case basis. We've got our tow haul mode. We can also change that. We can turn off that beeping that we get as we go into reverse. And we can turn our traction control system on or off as well. Moving down a bit more, we can change between our 2 high, 4 high, or our 4 low. And we've also got our shifter. We've got our park, reverse, neutral, drive, and then the sport mode. Sport mode essentially is just going to hold the gears a little bit longer. We do have the option of adjusting, so we can go plus or minus to change the gear manually if we want to. Moving down a bit more, we've got our e-brake, so easily adjust that as necessary, and a few cup holders. Then we also do have a little console in the middle there, so a little bit of storage space if we need to. And click it in order to lock that back into place. Now as we start to move up, we've got a little storage space along the top of that Sync 3 screen. And as we start to go up overhead, 302 version of the vehicle, so we do have an auto-dimming rear view mirror, basic cabin control lighting, and then we've also got, there we go, our sunglasses holder. And then we've got our vanity mirror. No lights on top of that. And we can crank this out and slide it to the side a little bit if we need to block a little bit more sun. Turn it, click it in order to lock it back into place. Now, one other thing to note, the Ranger's never going to have the option for a sunroof from the factory. You could technically look at doing something aftermarket if you really wanted to. And then along the back, as you can see there in the 302 version of the vehicle, we also do have a manual sliding window. Now that is available in some of the other options, but it will be standard inside of the 302 version of the vehicle. Now, taking a peek on the inside. So, a few things to point out. We do have a little bit of a different look for the 2021 model year. We've got our unlock and our lock buttons on the top. We've got the ability to control what's going on with our side view mirrors, and then we've got our window control buttons. Now, this specific F-150 does have the upgraded B&O sound system, so the Bang & Olufsen sound system, which does sound very nice. Now, that's not to say the regular one doesn't sound nice, but this B&O system just kind of takes it to the next level. We've got a little pocket along the door. That's going to be the same for the driver and the passenger side, and then a little bit of storage a little bit further down as well. Looking just to the left-hand side of the steering wheel, so a few things to point out. We've got our light controls. So those are going to be for the exterior lighting, so the proximity lighting on the outside of the vehicle. We can turn on the left or the right mirror. We can also lower our tailgate from inside the vehicle as well. Moving down, we've got our bed lighting, so we can toggle that bed lighting on or off. We've got the button for our fog lamps, and we can figure out what's going on with our running lamps. Honestly, the only settings I really recommend that you should worry yourself with, the very top, and then that other one, so that A button, the auto setting, because that's going to flip us between the daytime or the nighttime running lamps, depending on how bright it is outside. On top of that, we've got our dimmer switches, which are going to make the instrument cluster darker or brighter. We've got our parking brake, as well as power adjustable pedals. Now the pedals themselves, they are adjustable, and this is an add-on option as well, and that has to be done at the time of ordering from the factory. Moving down a little bit more, we've got our hood release latch, and then just up above, we can kind of make it out, we've got our OBD2 reader. So if we ever need to do an ECU tune and things like that, that's where we're gonna go in order to make that happen. Looking at seating inside of the F-150, we're in the XLT version of the vehicle, which means that we've got a cloth seat. Now that's going to be the same for the XLT and the XL version of the vehicle. You could technically do an aftermarket cat skin solution in order to be able to get those leather seats in the front, but one thing to note about that, even if you're looking at that cat skin option, you're still going to only have heated seats in the front row. You need to jump into the Lariat or above to get the ventilated seats also. Now, because we're in the 302 version of the vehicle, we've got power driver and power passenger seats on top of them being heated. Next up, taking a peek at the steering wheel. So one thing to point out first and foremost, this is going to be a short version of this video. So we're going to go over some of the basics of not only the instrument cluster and the buttons, but also of that Sync 4 screen. If you're looking for the full walk around, check down into the description below because I've done a full walk around video explaining absolutely everything, how it all works on this instrument cluster and steering wheel on top of that Sync 4 screen. But looking at some of the basics along the left side, we've got our cruise control. Now this one's just got the regular cruise control. We do have the option for the adaptive cruise control system if we'd like to, which is essentially your set it and forget it cruise. We've got our driver assistance, or we've got our lane keeping system, I should say. So the lane keeping system is either going to give us a steering wheel shake or recentering us, pulling us back into our lane. We can increase or decrease the volume, and we've also got our voice command prompt. So with the voice command prompt, we can change radio stations, make phone calls, or we can navigate using our voice. Off to the right-hand side, we've got our basic back button, our menu button, and then up and down, which is going to take us between a few different screens on that instrument cluster. The bottom left button is going to give us the ability to either answer or hang up on a phone call. We can change radio stations or songs by pressing the buttons along the side as well. Now moving off to the left-hand side, so left stick, we do have that button along the end, which is going to be for our windshield wiper fluid, so we can push in order to make that go. We can adjust how fast our windshield wipers are going also. Flip up for our turning lamps, so left versus right. We can pull in order to flash our high beams also. Now as we move off to the right-hand side a little bit, so we've got our engine start-stop button. So we are push-button start inside of this trim level of the vehicle, so this version. We've got our trailer backup assist. Now this one is actually slightly different from where it was positioned in the 2020 model year, but one of the nice things about this backup assist is once we've got a trailer connected, rather than counter-steering the steering wheel, what we would do is just twist this knob the direction that we want to go, and it'll automatically counter-steer the wheel for us. So very, very nice. Moving down, we've got our integrated brake controller, and then we've got a series of different drive modes, which we'll get to in just a second. But firstly, we've got some buttons for our 2 high, 4 high, and our 4 low. Now, if we were in the Lariat, we would also have a 4 auto button, but we're not in the Lariat as of right now, so we don't have that option. Now, as we get into our different drive modes, we've got some options. So we've got our normal, our tow haul, our eco, as well as our sport. Back the other way, we've also got our slippery, deep snow and sand, as well as our mud ruts. So each mode is going to do something a little bit different. So that mud ruts mode is going to lock us into that 4x4. Deep snow and sand is going to disable our traction control and change out the stability control settings as well. So each mode is going to do something slightly differently. And then we've got our 4x4 lock that we can do as well, simply by pressing the button in the middle. So we can lock out our rear differential if we need to. Now taking a peek just at the top of the screen, our auto engine start-stop button, so we've got the ability to turn that auto start-stop system off. Now what happens is if we turn it off, what's going to happen is if we come to a complete stop, the vehicle might kill power to the engine. If you hate it, you can temporarily disable it, but once we turn the vehicle off and back on again, we need to disable it again. Now, taking a look, we also do have our backup camera, which are hot button press in order to get access to it. If we had the full 360 view, that would also show up by pressing the camera button along the top. Our 4-way blinkers, and then we can also turn the traction control system on or off as well. Now this system is new for the 2021 model year. We've got a beautiful 12-inch screen, which as I mentioned gives us Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, which are wireless. We've got basic audio, we've got our basics for a phone, we've got built-in factory navigation. Our built-in factory navigation is going to be standard. There is the option for connected navigation. Connected navigation, you get a few years of free service, and then it's going to be a paid subscription after that. The big difference between factory navigation and the connected is it's going to give you live traffic alerts and things like that. But as I mentioned, we can connect through Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, so we can use Waze, Google Maps, or Apple Maps directly through the screen, which has all of that functionality as well. We've got the ability to add in a favorite button, some basics for our apps, and then some settings. So we've got our basic sound settings, clock, and things like that. As I mentioned, if you want the fuller walk-around of how this system works, check down in the description below for the full walk-around of this new Sync 4 system. But some other things in a nutshell, we've got some basic features, driver assistance settings, ton of different options. We've got our auto hold setting, which we can turn on or off, lane keeping system, pre-collision assist, and a number of other things. And then from there, we've also got this little guy. So as we start to press that tab button, we can kind of go up and down. It's a very dynamic press there. We can figure out what's going on. So we press something like zone lighting. We can drag it across onto the main screen as well, and that's going to update things. So we've got our full zone lighting, which is going to give us a full 360 lighting around the outside of the vehicle. We can also toggle on which lights come on as we go. So really, really nice. A few other things to point out. As we look to the right, we've got a little button. We're going to press that in order to get a little storage area. And then moving down, we do have our glove compartment as well. We can lock both of those back into place. And moving down the center stack, so a lot of things to point out here. So we can adjust our volume. Let's actually do a quick audio test.
Sound crazy, but you make me wanna write a song. And it goes like
this Bang & Olufsen sound system is absolutely incredible. I love it. But as we see, we've got a tuning rocker, so this honestly is probably going to be the least effective method of tuning, because yeah, we can kind of adjust it there. We can direct tune along the top, or you can just be simple. You can use your voice in order to change the stations. Let me show you how that works. 97.7.
Tuning to FM 97.7.
So it changes the station for us using our voice. So the tuning rocker, I think, is eventually going to end up going away because we can just use our voice instead. Hot button press in order to get some basic sound settings. We've also got the ability to change out what's going on. So we can change out our radio stations, or our sources, I should say. So AM, FM, Sirius XM, etc. Now, as bright and as beautiful as the screen is, you might find it a little distracting. If you do, we can press that button in either to bring up the clock, or we can turn it off completely with one more press and then bring it back to life again. Moving down a bit more, you can change songs or radio stations, play or pause. We've got some basic climate control settings. As I mentioned, because we're in the 302 version of the vehicle, we also do have heated seats in the front. We've got our rear window defrost and then our basic fan control as well. Now we do have dual zone climate control inside of this specific vehicle. And again, it is available as an option if you need it. And we can easily toggle the system on or off by pressing the button. And we do have the option of changing this around. So if we want the setting different for the driver passenger side, then we can just reset that in order to bring it back to the driver's default again. We've got a 12 volt port, and moving down, we've also got a traditional wall outlet. So if we need to plug in something, we've got the ability to easily do that. Now moving down a little bit more, we've got a few USB ports, and we've also got a little phone holder. Now this is actually pretty nice because we've got Android Auto and Apple CarPlay that are now wireless. We can just slide our phone in there if we need to, and we can connect wirelessly, which is really nice. A little storage cup along the bottom, and we've also got a little bit of storage area along both sides. And from there, we've also got our shifter. So shifter knob, we've got our park reverse neutral drive, and then the manual mode, which is going to give us better control over the gears as we go. So we've got a 10-speed automatic system. We can easily adjust the gears as necessary. Now this isn't going to be the standard position unless we get the XLT Sport Pack for the shifter knob. Typically it's going to be up by the steering wheel, but when we get into the Sport Pack, that's when it moves down. Now we do have a little button along the top, as you can see there, and that's going to be the power folding for this. So you can see power fold up and down. So one of the nice things is that even if you don't get the one with the interior work surface area, we can still fold that down to give ourselves a little bit of an area to still work. Now when we do look at the console in the middle with the XLT Sport Pack, so you can see there we've got a nice amount of storage space. We've got a few more USB cables, or USB ports down there as well. And we've also got a tray that we can jump up, and we can kind of push that down instead. So we've got a little bit of extra storage space as well. We're just going to click that down to lock it back into place. And we've also got a few more cup holders along the back also. And as we start to move up overhead, auto dimming rear view mirror inside of the 302 version of the vehicle. We've got some basic control lights for our interior lighting. Now, this is for the power sliding rear window. So as you can see there, we've got the power sliding rear window, which is standard inside of the 302 version, and it's optional in the other trim levels of the vehicle, the other option. So in the Lariat and above, it's standard. In the 301 and down, it's going to be available as an option. Now this one does not have the twin panel sunroof, but our controls up above would be there if we had it. Our sunglasses holder up above as well. Moving off to the left-hand side, so we do have our visor. We've got our vanity mirror as well. No lights on this one. We've got our business card holder along the top. We can crank this out, and we can also slide it a little bit if we need to block a little bit more sun. Click it in order to lock it back into place. And that's going to be the basics of the interior of the vehicle. Well, folks, that was a look at the Ranger versus the F150. What did you think, and which one do you think would work best for you? If you have any questions, drop down in the comment section below, and I'm more than willing to talk you through any issues that you might be having. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. Think about subscribing and sharing it with your social networks. And until I see you next time, make sure you stay safe. Now, one other thing to point out with this emergency, moving a